The dog cart is at the door, sir. Yes, miss.
I hope, Cecily, I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
No! You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. Go on, I'm ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell cough.
Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, and hopelessly.
I don't think that you should tell me you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, and hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily?
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell him to come around next week, same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care for anyone in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy, of course. Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it'll be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack confessed to us he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Frizzle. And, of course, a man who is much talked about and is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling, but when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or another. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. The next day, I brought this little ring in your name and this little bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you to always wear.
Did I give you this? It is very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given you for leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep your dear old letters.
My letters? But my own sweet Cecily, I haven't written you any letters.
You hardly need to remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week, and sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them, Cecily.
Oh, I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I'd broken off the engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that I can even now hardly read them without a tear.
Our engagement was ever broken off?
Of course it was, on the 22nd of March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
Why on earth would you break it off? What had I done? I'd done nothing at all, Cecily.
It would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once.
The perfect angel you are, my dear Cecily.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, darling, with a little help from others.
Oh, I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again, Cecily.
I don't think I could break it off now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling. It has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name is Ernest. There is something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But, my dear child, do you mean to say that you would not love me if I had some other name?
Well, what name?
Well, any name, like Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
Well, my own dear, sweet, lovely, little darling, I really can't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It isn't at all a bad name. In fact, it's a rather aristocratic name. Half of the chaps who get into bankruptcy court are named Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if my name was Algie, couldn't you still love me?
I might respect you. I might admire your character, but I fear I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experience in the practice of all rites and ceremonies of the church.
Oh yes, Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on a most important christening. I mean, on most important business.
Oh,
I shan't be away more than half an hour.
considering that we have been engaged since February the 14th and that I only met you today for the first time, I think it's rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
My impetuous boy. I do like his hair. I should write his proposal in my diary.
A Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business. Miss Fairfax, please.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Right, ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Pray, let me introduce myself to you. I'm Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. Something tells me that we're going to be great friends. I like you already, more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we have known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray, sit down.
May I call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure,
And you will call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
if you wish.
Then it's all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favorable opportunity for me to mention who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. Have you never heard of him, I suppose?
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that it is quite as it should be. The home seems to me a proper sphere for the man. Certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men seem very attractive. Cecily, Mama, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted and is part of her system. So do you mind looking at me through those glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I'm extremely fond of you.
You were here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years also resides here.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I'm Mr. Worthington's ward.
Oh, it's strange he never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more and more interestingly hourly. I'm not sure, however, if this news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I've liked you ever since I've met you. But I am bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing that I wish that you were, well, a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so alluring to the appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
Pray do! I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He's the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be impossible for him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, supplies us with many most painful experiences of which I refer to. If were not so indeed, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes?
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I am sorry to say that they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Ah, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I have never heard of any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours. Would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little country newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
I'm afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday at around 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train. I'm so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolyn, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten into, I will never reproach him with